for joining us, Darien. Excited.
I'm excited to be invited.
We'll start backwards and we'll move forwards. Put yourself back, a year or so ago. Like what problem were you facing? Like, what was the frustration like? Can you share a little bit about that?
So like pre-applying, I was a teacher, and I feel like that gives a little bit of context. I was feeling really overwhelmed balancing teaching and at the same time trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do first for the PhD process. And it was just like way too much. And I'm the first in my family to do this. So I couldn't go to anyone in my family or anyone even in my friend group to be like, so what am I supposed to be doing? What should I start with? And there's just like so many steps to the process and not knowing which one to prioritize. It was just becoming way, way too much. And I remember like our first phone call, and like I cried because it just felt like so much. And it felt nice to like tell somebody like I have all these feelings and I don't know even if I'm going to be able to get into a program based on where I was at. I was like kind
Yeah.
of secure in myself at the time.
Thank you for sharing. And so, I think a lot of people get in that. So you were at a point where you were thinking about it. And so clearly you were doing things, right? You were Googling or you were doing something. Like what was the frustratingness of it? Like what was so frustrating or annoying or confusing to you?
Um, there's so many like YouTubers and there's so many articles out there that you can read. I get very caught up in the research part. Like I want to read everything and I want to watch every video on like how I should do my essay or how I should present myself and things like that. And I'm doing all this research and I never take action in the research part. And so I kind of needed it was frustrating because I felt like I was going in circles. Like there's only so many videos or hundreds of videos you can read about like how to talk your essay. And that part was like the most important part for me for my application. I was like, how am I going to write this essay? Like that felt like the most overwhelming part of the application process was like
Mm.
that. And then also I wasn't sure in the programs that I would be a good fit for the programs that I were applying to. So I kind of felt like I needed a person to kind of like kick me in the butt and be like, all right, get started. Like you've done as much reading as you possibly can. You've done as much like the research part as you possibly can. Like let's
Mhm.
get started. And then also having someone tell kind of like I needed the affirmation that I was in a place that other programs would see me as like, okay, she can come to this school. I kind of needed someone to tell me like, there's not more that you could do. You don't have to go like start like a nonprofit and then you'll be like ready to apply. I need someone to be like right here, right now. You are in the place and ready to apply. So
Oh, I love that. And I think that's spot on for so many people because, right, the PhD is so bizarre because undergrad, everybody knows, right? Like you come from high school and then masters, right? Everybody knows you just can come right from undergrad, right? And then this PhD thing is like a very wide spectrum of
yeah.
folks from different backgrounds and experiences, which is great. But then but then literally you're like, where am I? And yeah, I love that. And yes, I think everybody goes through that process of like, am I ready? And to your point, you got to get to the other side of like, okay, I'm ready. And you sometimes you can use people to do that, right? You can use people to be like, we good, let's go.
Yeah.
It's not like you're outsourcing your own because you did all the right, you did all the work and the thought, like you didn't outsource any of that. You just didn't want to keep doing that forever.
Like I was worried that by asking for help, it meant that I didn't do this on my own. I don't know how to explain it. Like I just felt like asking for help made it feel like it wasn't me doing the work. Asking for help means like you are quite aware of like who you are as a person and what you need in order to move forward. 'Cause I'm a person who's like, I do everything by myself. I don't need help. I will figure it out. But then I was like, I kind of want to apply it this next cycle, and going in circles is just going to make you more frustrated, make you feel more insecure, make you feel like you can't do it.
Give yourself a positive experience, but then B, you did a ton of work with us, right? Like we are not doing it for you. How would you describe that working relationship?
Oh, for sure. Like I learned that pretty soon, especially when I got to the essay part, that it really is someone is not doing the work for you. And I still had to go through that process of the writing process is very scary. Like when you write something down and you're like, this is not good enough, I'm scrapping it. This is not good enough, I'm scrapping it. I still went through that. Like I was so unsure about everything I was putting down and like going through that over and over again. So I learned pretty soon, like, yeah, nobody's like gonna write the essay for you. You kind of like need to do it. And then someone can like tell you where you can tighten up certain parts, but you have to come up with your ideas and like tap into what you're passionate about. So I learned that very
Mhm. Yes. But do you think the process helped you hone in on your ideas in a more structured way, right? Because we didn't just like drop you on like a white piece of paper and like write an essay, because that
Oh no.
would not be fun.
I remember the first thing was just it was like this doc and you fill in like what are you passionate about, what those initial questions, and they were hard to answer because it's like you are interested in so many things, and to be like I need to write a really tight blurb about what I'm interested in forced me to like make a decision. This is what out of everything, yes, I'm a person who loves all these different things and would love to study this and this and this, but like answering those first set of questions forced me to commit to something and be like, this is the thing that I want to do. This is the out of everything, this is the thing I'm most passionate about. Um, and in doing that, I like learned that I wanted to center Caribbean history and Caribbean education. And so like it kind of forced me to like put it on paper and be like, nope, this is what we're committing to. You can do all of the other things, but this is what you feel like you're most excited to write about. So this is what we're doing. And I always went back to that paper and be like, all right, you committed.
People people love that initial setting the stage and like strategy portion, and like I love it too because it is deceptively simple. Like the questions are not like, uberly technical, but it forces you to kind of get clear, which I love.
So I do.
Yeah. Well, because simple and concise is hard. It's easy to be verbose and beat around the bush and like have 18 different things. It's hard to pick one or two.
I
And
agree.
so,
I agree. And then when it was time to like start looking for programs, then it was like, okay, that yes, you love that professor, you're doing great work. You wish you can see him in the hallway and say, hi, like, wow, I love your work. But that's not the person that you want to like be doing your work or what you're interested in. So it kind of made forced me to go back and be like, I love that professor. She's amazing. He's amazing. Like love
yeah.
them, but doesn't mean necessarily that is the program for me because this is what I'm really interested in.
Okay. Can you tell us more about your program selection process? Because this is a very critical and, speculative and a little bit iterative in how we do it. So, how could you describe your process?
I will be honest, I started by going on like US News and looked up like I just needed somewhere to start with. I needed to even
Yeah.
know what schools had education programs so I can like start diving deeper on what specific programs are in those education departments. So I went to like the US News, did like the first 30 schools and like did a deep dive in the departments and looked like some schools might have an education department, but they're focused so much on like psychology of education or
Oh,
curriculum and teaching, or like even just like getting your master's in teaching. And so it kind of pushed me to look and see, okay, but I'm looking more at like theoretical social sciences and seeing which programs had like social science of education kind of mid
hmm.
programs within. And then once I found that, then I started looking at the professors within those programs
Oh,
and
good.
which
Good,
was a
good,
good.
good. Okay. I'm wondering if you could tell me, so then you decide to join the program. When did you start to kind of think, okay, this is working for me? Like when did you kind of be like, because there's like a ramp up period, and then you're like, oh, like what data points were you getting back to be like, this is working?
Oh, it was when we had to start sending the emails out to set up calls. I think that was like the best part of this work. Like your program is that pushing us to like go and like talk to people, because once I started talking to professors, talking to students who are at programs, then I could start like seeing which ones were like closer to what I was interested in, kind of feel out if the professor, because me focusing on Caribbean history, a lot of the professors that I looked at were focusing on African American history in the United States. So that was awesome. And it forced me, I learned this. I got to pitch my idea over and over again and found out which parts of my story people were that needs to be like included in the package. And which parts people were kind of like, oh, yeah, that's cool. But like which ones like made people light up and made them interested in me telling them more. It was very affirming, but it also like your story could be so long. You could mention from this to all the way that like when you start writing an essay, you could fill like 3-4 pages of your life story. So just like pitching yourself and pitching your idea and seeing people's reactions to those ideas and to parts of your stories were like so helpful. Like that's when I was like, oh, this is totally working, because now I know for sure what I want to do. I know generally what schools I'm interested in, and I'm starting to see which professors are interested in what I'm interested in. And then now I'm also seeing what about me other people find special, which was really helpful.
Oh, I love that. It's like, did I pay you to say that? But like, yeah, it's the reps, it's the pitching, it's the getting the feedback. It's like, I think sometimes we think we can just do this in a vacuum, like because literally you could, like anybody could type an essay
Yeah.
at their home computer. But
Yeah.
I think you're missing this rich context and like back and forth, and that just brings so much more to light for you to write even better, because you're a good writer. Like I remember you're a very good writer. It's just the limitations, right? You only
Yeah.
have 2 pages, so I know super great. I loved it, and I mean like, and I think you did amazing. Okay, so what do you think? So you talked to these folks, now we're applying, we're doing the writing. What did it
Mhm.
feel like when you submitted your applications? Because we still don't know the results at this point.
One thing I was like super thankful that I wasn't down to the wire. Like at some point I let go of the essays. I had to like, I was like,
Mm,
I did the best that I could and I really devoted a lot of time to it. And eventually I was like, I feel happy and comfortable and I feel like I'm presenting like my authentic self. I feel like this is truth. And that was like super important for me, like throughout the process. It was just like, what I'm writing, is it true to me? And I didn't want to present something that wasn't. And so when I got to that point, I like had to let it go. And so I spent like the last 3 days just like filling in the rest of the application, like, you know, your name and your this and your that, and like those little pop-up questions that come up and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't like account for that. So I just spent a lot of time. So I didn't feel like super like, oh my gosh, I'm down to the deadline. It was, so when I clicked the button and like sent all of them, it felt very like, I like called my mom and cried. I was like, I like did
uh,
this thing. It felt like this rush. I don't know. There was no like anxiety at the end. It was just kind of like, I have done literally the best that I can do. And there's like just nothing more that I can do. It was a release, really.
we cannot control the universe, and I think a lot of people in this PhD process, myself included, we're high achievers. We tend to get really good results, and so we want to control everything, and we do our best. To your point, like
Yeah.
you did the work. But we do have to be like, what is meant for us can't miss us, right?
Just let it be.
That's cool. So, anything surprising about the Fearless Grad program that you were like that you liked or you found useful, or like anything that you think others might like?
You should focus on this, then focus on this, then focus on this, then focus on this. That kind of like step by step. But
Mm.
also, you gave us so much flexibility where things were overlapping. But I kind of needed like, hey, maybe you should work on your resume and your LinkedIn. And like when I did that, then when I was reaching out to professors, I felt like, oh, I was like presenting my best self. My LinkedIn was good in case they looked at it, and my resume that I was attaching, this is probably the resume I'm going to be like attaching to my application. So I felt like pretty confident in those things now, like going in. Having like a plan was really helpful. And I know you had that like spreadsheet on like if you had 6 months to apply, if you had 3 months,
Mm.
how much to like pack in that amount of time.
Mhm.
And I feel pretty grateful that I started super early. Well, I felt to me was like on the earlier end, because I got to reach out to professors in May. And I feel like that's like my biggest tip, is to reach out before June versus after June, because after June in the summer, like I was getting less responses than when I was getting it in May, because they were still very like, oh, like they don't have finals yet and they don't have papers to grade and they're not worried about their own students yet. Like they haven't hit that part. So like April, May was like such a sweet spot to reach out to people. But I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't gotten the other parts of myself together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is funny. It's like we think it's one thing, but then to your point, like you can't just send those emails with all those other pieces. So getting all
Yeah.
those assets like at your ready really
Yeah.
made you feel capable and like and then go take those steps, which is great.
Of course, the essay part. The essay help was just like, I feel like I talk about essays a lot, but it was really helpful to have someone kind of look at your ideas. I learned so much about myself. Like I don't like to share my stuff like on the Slack and stuff. Like that's just like my personal thing. Like I always felt so vulnerable, which is what we're learning through as we go along in the process. But being able to like send an email and be like, well, this is the essay and this is what I'm working with, and having someone just be like, these are like the great parts, or this is where you're tightening up really well and this is where you still need to tighten. It was, like, to be honest, very frustrating sometimes to have your edits and be like, oh, like this, can you say this in a more clear way? And I feel like I spent a week trying to say it in the way that I did. And so to have someone be like, oh, actually, it can be clearer. You can be more concise. You can be more to the point. You can be more direct and stop like going around the bush. It was so frustrating. But when I got the email where it was like, yes, you got the line, I was like, there's nothing like that. Feeling was amazing. It was like, oh wow, I like actually did it. I got, and when I reread my essay or reread my essay by the end, like I was like, thank God she pushed me to like get this one line, because I feel like it's the line that says this is what I'm interested with, and I'm so confident that this is it. There's like, you know, like there's no like, oh, what is she interested in? Like there was no like like unsure. Like I didn't feel like the person was reading it, they would feel unsure about what I cared about. So having that line and just being like out of the, like, this is it. This is it. And you're either with me or not, felt really like, okay, well, I can't do anything more than that.
I love it. I love it. And like, yeah, because you really have to articulate what you want and why. And exactly to your point, it can't be like maybe this, maybe that, right? It just doesn't hit the same. So yeah,
It really doesn't.
I'm happy. I think I know what you're talking about. Well, thank you for sticking with it, because I mean, clearly you got to be a stronger writer through this process.
Yeah, for sure. I think about that a lot. It's the vulnerability thing, to say like this is what I care about. Me being very clear and direct kind of forces you to be vulnerable and be like, this is it. This is who I am and this is what I care about. And it's kind of hard to do that, to like put yourself out like that. So I've learned a lot about it. Like, oh, well, if you're really confident and passionate about it, like the best way to present that is to be direct and be as like concise and clear as possible. So
good for you. This is something. And so, because I mean, yeah, we're all humans and we want to know that it's like going to be received well.
You can link so many parts of your past to why you're doing this now. So like trying to nail down the one thing that you want them to know about you, and you don't get a lot of space. You think like, you know, in undergrad, you can like talk about yourself for like 2 paragraphs. You get like 5 lines. It felt like it was like 5 lines. And in those 5 lines, maybe 1 or 2 of them is actually saying like, well, for me, it was like, oh, I'm an Afro-Caribbean woman, and that's like really, and I grew up in Guyana. I'm like, that's really important to me. It was so different to not spend so much time talking about the past and instead talking about the future.
I think I've read probably thousands of these at this point. People kind of take that undergrad mentality, to your point, of like, you know, all about the past and we forget about the future. So, and that's really like you're selling your vision of what you want to do and why they should get excited to work with you. Your background is super diverse, sociology and teaching. And then what programs did you apply to?
Sociology teaching, I applied to PhD in education programs, and usually in the culture, society, institutions, like that there's like mini departments, and usually it's in that one. And then so it's more like social science, humanities based.
Mm-hmm.
And then so lots of PhD in educations, and then my like reach kind of schools was PhDs in history, and one school was Africana studies. So
Okay.
yeah.
Talk to me about reaching in different fields because this comes up a lot for folks.
Yeah.
Like, how did you go about, I guess, figuring that out or deciding to do that?
Yeah. Well, I like learned pretty early on I wanted to do history of education, and I was very nervous because I was a sociology major, and I don't have any like formal teaching in like historical research.
Mm-hmm.
I had done it like independently on my own as a teacher, but I hadn't done it like in a classroom with a professor and with a grade. Then I went over like my transcripts and like my old work from my master's program, and I was like, and spoke to like the person who ended up writing my recommendation letter. And I was like, wait a minute, I was doing historical work. How best can I get in these history of education programs with my sociology degree and with like teaching as my background? Teaching is such like a big part of my story, and it's how I knew I wanted to do history of education. So for me, the priority were education programs, because at the end of the day, like that's why I'm doing this, and like why I even took the first step in starting the process was education. So that was top priority. And then I was like, well, if I'm interested in history of education, there are people who are doing education work, but in history departments. History groups are hard to break into. So I just like, I only applied to 2 history programs, 6 education, and then 1 Africana studies program. And
Okay.
that one was just like, oh, well, I'm doing like Afro-Caribbean history, and I'm linking it to African American history. It might be a really good space for me to be in.
So, what schools did you apply to?
Down the list, I did,
Or just if whatever you can remember.
yeah, I did a UNC Chapel Hill, University of Virginia. I did Stanford, Harvard. Um, I did UPenn, but that one is a little bit weird because I did not commit to taking the GRE, and so I like had to choose which one I cared more about, like taking the GRE and doing UPenn or not. But it was on my list, and they had a dual degree program with history and education, so you have to apply separately. So I would include that, and then I did Wisconsin, Madison. They were awesome. Who am I forgetting? Cornell for history and Brown for Africana studies.
When did you start getting results? What did that feel
Oh my
like?
gosh,
What happened?
January. Had my first interview like 2 weeks into January. I think it was like January 15th. It was Chapel Hill. And that interview was it felt very informal, just like a get to know you with the professor and the head of the program. So it wasn't nerve-wracking. I like had talked to that professor like so much over the time. Like he was the one professor I connected with multiple times throughout the process. So I didn't feel like
Okay.
super nervous because we've talked a lot. So yeah, but I didn't get like my first official year in until like a couple weeks later, and it was Virginia and Wisconsin Madison, and then UNC came in. So I was like riding a high. I was like, yay! Like before February, that had gotten a couple offers and really great packages. So I was feeling
Amazing.
good. Yeah.
Oh, tell me about the interview process. Like,
Yeah.
how did you feel like we helped you prepare, and how did you just feel like it went in general?
We had a one Zoom call, and they were like questions, and then we got to break apart into groups and talk to
Yeah.
people. The purpose of it was probably to like practice and see which questions you're tripping over. But what I really learned from it was like talking to other people forced me to go like, oh, everybody is also struggling to figure out how to say their things concisely. And everyone is also trying to answer these questions to the best of their abilities. I didn't like overly prepare when I was doing that. I just went in and saw like what would come out of my mouth if I had to answer this question, like what would I reach for as my answer? And that was super helpful because the things that I reached for, I was like, oh wait, I actually do believe that. That is true. It's very true about
Good.
me and about what I care about. So it gave me an opportunity to kind of like riff, to just kind of off
Yeah.
the top of the dome.
What level of confidence do you have to be at where that is where you are?
I'm not very good at like, let me like pre-plan because I feel like I
Totally.
sound too robotic. So
Agree.
just having an opportunity to like talk to people who are also in the process.
And yeah, and I mean, I think you had really done interview prep for months, right? You had done it with the connecting, you had done it with the writing, like as you're pitching your ideas and going through it. Yeah, at that point, yeah, you don't want to be too rehearsed. You want to keep that stuff like at your fingertips, but you don't want it to be too rehearsed. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. Did you have physical interviews or were they all Zoom?
They were all Zoom. UNC, as I said, was the first one. I didn't have an interview for Virginia or for Wisconsin Madison, so I didn't have like time to practice that much. I know this like at the back of my hand. I just
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
see. And then by like early February, that's when like Harvard and Stanford zone started coming out. My heart was just like, and I learned that those were kind of really different from my very first interview where it felt more informal and more
Mm,
casual. Those were they asked questions that I quite honestly had not prepared for. And one of
mm,
them was I always remember is like what are you reading currently and what have you read or who are some scholars that you feel you would like be interacting with. And like even though you know that information, or at least I felt like I knew because I had done so much reading in the beginning. Like I read the articles of professors, but I also read a lot of like theoretical work in the, and it was like, why are you doing this? What are you passionate about? You know, those types of questions where it feels like feel good questions. And then this one was just like very like, what have you
Ooh.
read? What have you done?
Ooh, yeah, no, that would definitely trip me up because I
Yeah.
don't honestly remember names that well. Like I
Yeah.
remember content, but I'm so hard to remember names. So
That
that's
like
impressive.
before those two interviews, I just like had a feeling, not had a feeling. I got sticky notes and I wrote the names of people that I like remembered and I just like stuck them on the computer like right here. So as
Oh,
I'm talking, I'm
that is
oh,
nice.
okay, I at least remember this person's name as a point of reference. Because I'm also not good with the names. But I would
Yes.
have just,
Okay.
if I didn't remember the names, I would have just honestly described the book because I'm not.
Right, right, right. Yeah, it would because I mean, I think they recognize you're a little like we're all a little nervous in that kind
Yeah.
of situation. Okay,
Yeah.
so you did all the interviews and then was there like what was it just like you got offer letters or like anything else happened?
After the interviews, especially after like the Harvard and Stanford interviews, I was spiraling. So I went on Reddit. Never do that. Went on Reddit
Mm,
and they were like, oh, usually you find out 2 weeks after your interview. Like that's when you get your calls. And I was like, I just needed a point of reference. So like I was like, okay, 2 weeks of me like not going insane and trying to figure out when exactly they were gonna call me. So I went with that point of reference. I got a call, like I was teaching, and I like left my classroom and I remember answering the phone and it was awesome. And then I got that one call and then in the afternoon the same day. Well, I had
no.
the interviews the same day too. I had
Oh,
Harvard in the morning, Stanford in the afternoon, and then the calls came the same way. Harvard in the
oh my
morning,
God.
and then in the
Uh,
afternoon.
Are they like coordinating? Okay, so like literally what did you feel like? Because like I
Oh yeah.
cried. I'm curious. What
Well, when Harvard called me, it came up as spam. I didn't answer it, and then I saw Cambridge on the bottom, missed call. So I was like, oh my gosh, what is this?
yeah.
So I called back, and she picked up right away, the dean. And so I like left the classroom. She told me, I don't remember anything she said because I was crying the whole time. I had to like leave my
Uh,
school. Like I
I,
went down the stairs and went outside and had a big tear session. Called my mom, called my partner. Like
yeah.
they thought something was wrong. They thought someone had died. it was like completely surreal, especially with Harvard. I applied because I was like, I'm not gonna miss my shot. Like I'm just gonna shoot a shot. Like I didn't
Mm-hmm.
put it on like the list of like, this is like probably I'm gonna get in here. Like I did not
Mm-hmm.
feel that. I remember talking to you and I was like, I really want to go to Stanford because they have a history of education program. And that
Mm-hmm.
was like our first call. So that was like the light that was like guiding me the whole time. And Harvard wasn't like really what I was like focusing
Mm-hmm.
on. So to get the call was like a complete surprise, like genuine surprise and like disbelief. And yeah, I was like emotional, very emotional. And then by the afternoon, like I got this weird email from the professor that I applied for Stanford, but your application, like there's something wrong with it.
What?
I was like, what are you talking about?
He's
It
like,
was
not
like,
now,
I'll
dude.
call you
It's
right
too
now.
late.
So I just like went to the bathroom to be like, I thought, something was wrong. So I called and then he was just like, hi, I just like have to ask you something. And then he was like, how soon can you come to, how soon can you be in
Did,
California?
did that to you? No, he didn't.
Bruh.
Oh
It
my
was,
God.
we got these two things.
That's insane. I didn't realize they were on the, like, they were just so much like that. Oh my God, insane. Okay,
Yeah.
so you get these, you have multiple amazing offers, two
Yeah.
like incredible offers. So then how did you decide?
I was super excited for the Harvard and Stanford call, but honestly, the first three offers affirming, like, oh my God, like just to get these offers, and they were from great schools, and I loved all the professors I applied to. It was a
Mhm.
hard decision. I was not a person. I did it down to the wire a week before it was due, and I visited every school. I talked to every
Oh.
professor. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I was making a sound decision. Um,
Mm,
and because all the professors were amazing, it did not come down to the professor. It really came down to
mm,
like the community at the school,
mm,
and how I felt when I walked into the room. A lot of it was like, did people look like me? And like, were they black, and were they also like into black education? Like how many people in my program were interested in that? Because it's great to be in a space about education, and then there's
mm.
like black education. It was really about the community when I walked in, whatever. So I visited every school, talked to every professor, re-talked to every student that I talked to in the beginning,
Oh wow.
just to like get their headspace. Like
Yeah.
all were very competitive packages, so I couldn't even compare them because of the packages. Um, and then yeah, I decided to go to Harvard, and that's where I'm at now.
Congratulations. Oh,
Super
good
excited.
for you. That's so exciting.
Yeah, it is very exciting. I don't usually say it. I'm always like,
I
I'm just
know.
looking to Boston. Why? Just a program. I'm just like doing a thing.
I'm with you. And like, so obviously my Ivy is like, not is Harvard is like the what's like the
No.
Mecca, whatever. No, but like, but I wanted to share with you how
Yeah.
if like people will ask me or talk to me and they'll be like, "Oh, did you go to Cornell?" Or it's like, "Oh, just for my PhD." Like I could
Yeah.
never get in there for undergrad or da 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 da. And like I had to, and I remember like literally just like a year ago, like I had like a Cornell T-shirt or something, and someone's like, "Oh, did you go there?" And I go, "Yes." And like
That was it.
that was so powerful to just do that for
Yeah.
yourself and just be like, "Yes." Like I don't need caveats. And you're just starting your journey. So your
I
journey
know.
will
I
be
can't wait till I get to that point, because right now it's very like, and it really also, I really loved Stanford. That was the first school I was like, Natalie, this is where I want to
yes,
go. Like it was
yes.
hard to let go. It was my partners from California, so it felt very
Oh,
tied to my relationship. Um,
oh.
yeah.
Is that where your partner lives currently?
Well, he just moved there, and I moved here, and we're still together, and
Got it.
but it was really hard. I remember us sitting in a room and me kind of
Oh
admitting
yeah.
to myself that I feel like Harvard is where I want to go. And
100%. I had a partner and it was like I got him very excited for Colorado, similar to you probably got your partner excited for California. And then I had to be like, my heart's over here. It's a lot. So
yeah,
I feel you
was really hard.
100%.
And so now, like, even still saying like Harvard just feels it almost feels like I'm bragging, but I'm really not. I just want to be like, oh, I'm just doing this like thing, like not a big deal. But
Mm.
it was awesome to like tell my teaching community, especially because they didn't know at all. And then we were like doing our end of year party and my principal announced it. And I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. I thought everybody was going to hate me for leaving teaching. Yeah, I was very like,
Oh,
I was like, oh, this is just going to go badly. I like asked like my mentor
oh,
teachers, like, should I even say this? Like, I just feel like I don't want anyone to think I'm like going off and like leaving them.
oh.
But after like it being announced, like it didn't feel like an individual win. It felt like a win for a community of people. And like that, like
Oh.
again, cried when it was announced.
Good.
It felt like and this is how it's been feeling since telling people in my circle and telling people that I've like worked with for the past 3 years and just,
Mhm.
it no longer feels like it's a thing that I did. It feels like it's a thing that a lot of people in my community did or made possible.
Mm,
It's just been to even just like do a PhD
mm.
is a collective win, and then to do it at Harvard is a collective win, to be a Black woman at Harvard is a collective. It just feels, and I'm like, I don't know, first in my family, and it's just so much. And it was just so nice, especially just to see like my teacher friends like celebrate this thing and were so happy for me. It just made me go like, why
Mm.
am I so not ashamed, but so shy when it comes to sharing this thing? And it's
Oh,
tied
I
to so
mean,
much beautiful like joy on my end. So I have to like get over that.
well, it's just it's so normal. It's so human. You just don't want to feel like you're leaving anyone behind. And and yeah, we have to kind of own our own accomplishments and own like what we're excited about. Like anything against anybody else. It's just like this is just what I am choosing to do. Um, but I, again struggle with it every day, like every day, because that's just how it goes. So, but yeah, that's well, good for you. Okay, so did you move? Are you in Boston right now?
I moved the 1st of July, yeah. So I'm like in my new space and trying to make it more like the walls are still so blank and I have so much to do to like make it feel more homey. It's awesome to be here. I've been like walking through campus a lot, enjoying the
Yeah,
neighborhood because
yeah,
I'm in Cambridge now, and it's a really nice neighborhood, and I'm just trying to
yay.
enjoy it. The best part of doing your PhD is the summer before doing your PhD at a school without actually having to do any of the work. So I'm
Oh,
really
so
trying
true.
to like enjoy that this summer.
So true. So wait, what is the actual name of your department where you're doing your PhD?
So it's PhD in education, culture, society, and institutions.
Because there's like four or five.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then within that, my advisor, historian of Black education, and that's where I want to be heading to.
It's a weird thing. Like you're just gonna grow and change so much over 4 years. Like I'm so excited to see who you become and what you do. With the caveat that like nothing will go as fast as you want it to, and until like give yourself grace and also give the process grace. I am super impatient, so I just want things now, and so that's just something to
Yeah.
keep in mind
I'm
that
happy. I'm actually happy to hear that because like I really love
right.
being in school and it's really exciting, especially with my project. Everyone always tells me, "Oh, you're gonna have to take like 6, 7 years," and inside I'm like, I get to take 6, 7 years. So I'm excited to like. This is not like a quick run. This is a long thing that we're
Yeah.
doing, and I'm really excited for the journey. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you get to just write your ticket wherever, wherever you want to go after. I
Oh,
mean,
we'll
I
see.
mean, and well, and as you create experiences within your PhD, like you don't even know the options that are even available, like that either A, they don't exist today, or B, you haven't discovered them, or C, like, you are going to create something completely different. And so like the opportunities you're going to create for yourself are just going to be, I mean, insane.
We'll
So
see.
excited
We'll
for you.
see.
Okay. Okay. Anything, what would you tell yourself a year ago as you were like sitting in New York City being like, can I do this?
You're kind of wasting time going in circles, Darien. You're kind of you already know what you want to do. You do. I did. I knew it. I knew it from the beginning. And then I just second guessed it
Mm,
and was like, no, I should be more passionate in this other thing, or maybe they will care more about this other thing. But I
mm,
knew what I cared about, and I knew what was important to me, and I knew what part of my story was like the most important thing that I knew all these things. Like you kind of, it's in you already and you know it. And it's usually the first idea that you had is usually the idea that I always go with the first. I end up going back to the first idea. So as someone who's like overthinking and going in circles, I wish I had just told myself, like, you remember that idea that you had like a month ago and that like that was the one and then you talked yourself out of it. That is the idea that you're end up gonna go or end up using in the end.
I I will say part of the process, at least for me, it's almost like I have to prove it to myself. Like I have that idea that I love, but I have to say, okay, no, 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 no. And then I'm like, okay, you can stay. Right. Like I kind of have to do it.
Yeah.
But to your point, you could skip those steps, which would
Well,
be
that's the thing.
nice.
I don't feel like I should have skipped it. I feel like it's good to go
Mm,
through those steps of okay, like you said, no, no, no. But I wish that I wasn't like giving myself such a mental headache. Like I feel
mm,
like you can still go through those steps and
mm,
return to that and without like, I don't know, I really like beat myself up. I was really mean to myself in that process. And I don't think you need to be mean to yourself to go through that process to even get back to your original idea. But for me personally, I was
mm,
very like hard on myself. So I wish I could just be like, you're gonna come back to that idea. Just like take your time, go through that like cycle, and then guess what? You're gonna be right there.
mm,
You don't have to like yell at yourself or be mean.
mhm. Oh,
Like
that is good because it's like someone gave the analogy of like you can run a marathon, right? Put on your sneakers, have fun with your friends, put your music in, whatever. Or you can run a marathon with a gun pointed at you. Like either way, you're going to go from A to B, but the experience is going to be very different. And I'm the one holding the gun, so like maybe I could just run my own race and
yes,
not,
like enjoy it along the way. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I was built. A lot of overthinking happened. And it's good because I feel like that is my problem. I like committed. I've been like, yes, I'm just the type of person who needs to like do that. I don't need to be mean about it.
Okay. Would you recommend FearlessGrad to others, and if so, why or why
Uh
not?
yes, I would recommend it. And why? Because it's good to have someone in your corner that's done it before. And I think as if you're someone, especially if you're someone who doesn't have friends, family, or anyone who's ever done this process, no one has ever done anything alone. Like that's not how it works. You need community, you need people who are there to hold you accountable, to support you, to get you out of your ruts. Family members can't do that, or your partner can't do that, but everybody has a role to play, role that you actually need to get through this process. And so it's really
Mhm.
good to have someone in your corner that kind of been through the process, knows what they're doing. And I think that is a worthwhile investment.
Yay, awesome. Yeah, because yeah, it's interesting how you say people have their roles. It's like, and like put too much on one person and then,
Yes.
right, like
Yeah, I would
it's
like
not
go to my
gonna,
partner and be like, why can't you help me figure this out? Like I'm stuck in this rut, and why can't you like help me? I wouldn't trust that he knew what he was talking about.
because
And
he
that's
wasn't an expert.
and so it was very unfair to him. And like I think that's why another reason why you should have someone who knows because then you don't put all that pressure and all that like emotional weight on people in your life who are trying to help you, but not
Yeah,
necessarily that's not their expertise, that's not their role that they need to
yeah,
play. They need to make sure that you're
yeah,
fed and that you're sleeping.
right.
Having someone in your corner who you can quite literally be like, get me out, like I'm in circles and I don't know
Yeah,
how to figure this out.
yeah. Okay. Anything else you would share with people starting their PhD journey process?
Just do it. If this is something like you really like want to do, like do it and shoot your shot. Like put it on other people. I was like, you know what? I'm
Mm,
not going to say no to myself. I'm going to apply um, where I see it's a good fit, and regardless of like name of institution or prestige or anything,
mhm.
I'm going to apply, and I'm not going to tell myself no, that I don't deserve this. At the end of the day, I will put that responsibility on the people looking at my application. And even if they did say no, like, because I did have schools, I had great fits with professors, and they did end up saying, no. And sometimes they'd write emails being like, we wanted to take you, but just right now we can't. But like, at least I didn't say no to myself. That somebody
Mm,
else had to go through that process of deciding whether
mhm.
to take me or not. So just don't say no to yourself. Just go ahead and do it. Do it all.
And well, and how I tell people this, and I think it's hard for people to grasp, but yeah, you could literally get it. Where did you get a no from?
Yeah, Cornell had a great history professor. He's also
Okay,
doing education history in the US and Guyana. And I was like, oh my God, like he's
we're
from there.
here. We're here.
Um, but there were circumstances outside of my control why
Hmm.
I wasn't like accepted in that program. And I think about that a lot. I'm like, wow, we are like such a good fit. And it's to me clear that we are, but I'm glad. And it was a history program, so it was still one of my schools where
Mm,
like chances of me getting in were like, for me, I felt like it was going to be lower. But at least I didn't say no. And the message that I received from the head of the department just kind of affirmed that you shouldn't say no to yourself, like because people want to take you. They might honestly want to take you, and it's just
mhm,
something that has to do
mm,
with the department, politics, whatever.
mhm,
That is the reason why you weren't accepted. So that message was like, okay, great. I'm glad I still like shot my shot in that
mhm.
department.